All right, guys, you have asked and I'm going to answer. A couple weeks ago, I asked you guys for some topic ideas to cover on this channel and you guys delivered. And one of those topic requests was going into detail about how I found and picked the Casita. So in today's video, we're gonna take a deep dive on how I came to this moment in time to own my very own Casita. But before we jump in, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification and liking this video, all of those things help support this channel and it is free to you. All right, let's jump right on in. Hi, buddy. How you doing? When I first hit the road, I was truck camper all the way. And then at some point I decided that the truck camper that I personally had was too big. I didn't want the big truck and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to be a little bit smaller. And that pushed me out of the truck camper realm and I got into the 4Runner. And with the 4Runner, I'm very limited on what I can tow. I don't want to tow more than 3,000 pounds, and that's pushing it just because of gas mileage for my particular situation. I have a very heavy 4Runner because it's fully armored, minus the rear bumper. Didn't want to maximize my towing capacity, so I wanted to stay around the 2,500 mark max. So that really right off the bat limited me on what I could tow. Somewhere around the time that I got the 4Runner, I started really getting interested in the fiberglass campers, specifically with the Scamps. I loved the 13-foot Scamp, and you know, I watch Elsa and Baron's channel and I loved their Scamp adventures, and it was just kind of a selling point at that point that I was sold on a fiberglass. How I came up with picking a fiberglass camper was really been a process. You know, when I had the truck camper, I really liked the truck camper, but I didn't like the fact that I had to pack up camp and go places every time. So I kind of got sold on having a detachable because I could detach, lock up camp, and go in and explore, go to town, do whatever, and still secure my site. So there was a lot of things that kind of led me towards having a pull behind, but ultimately I love the truck camper idea, and if I had a truck, I probably would have a truck camper right now. I didn't want to get rid of the 4Runner. I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money building out my 4Runner for full-time overlanding and off-roading. I'm fully armored, I'm heavy, so there's a lot of factors that led me to picking a fiberglass camper. One of them being the weight. Another factor was that they are pretty reliable. There's really not a whole lot of leaking issues other than in your typical window or like your mushroom cap or vents or whatever. Like, there's not a lot of connection points with it. It's basically two bathtubs sitting on top of each other. And that was really appealing, not only because in my last two campers I've had tons and tons of leaking issues with the roof, with the windows, with all kinds of stuff, and I just did not want to deal with that anymore, and a fiberglass camper kind of eliminated a lot of that. I also like the design of the fiberglass campers. The Scamp is my absolute favorite, and I have been looking for Scamps probably since I got the 4Runner, off and on, and then heavily about a year before I got the A-frame style camper, because before I was really focused on living in the 4Runner, but after about 2.5 years or 2 years of that, I was ready to have a little bit more space and preference. I didn't really know a whole lot about Casitas at the time, but I started hearing from some of you guys and some of my friends who suggested the Casita as well, but when I looked them up, there was no way I could afford a Casita. They were way more expensive than the Scamps were at the time that I was doing research. So I kind of wrote them off, never thinking I'd afford a Casita. So fast forward to April of 2024, found the next best thing, which was the A-frame style camper, and by June of 2024, it was totaled. And for those of you who are just joining my channel, welcome. Let me fill you in real quick. In June of 2024, a 50-mile-an-hour wind gust ripped the roof off of my A-frame style camper and completely totaled my home. So I was back on the market for looking for a camper. In that time, I noticed that prices on inventory were skyrocketing, and things that I once could afford when I was searching for the A-frame style camper were now out of my budget, and Scamps and Casitas were nowhere near that budget. There was a couple of months there where I was without a camper. I'd moved back into the 4Runner and I was trying to figure things out. In that process, Agron passed away, and then it just became Pike and I. And honestly, going from 3 dogs to 2 dogs and now to 1 dog, it is a completely different experience. Room is not as much of a factor. You know, granted, my dogs and I are used to living in small spaces. For example, we lived in a 4Runner for 2.5 years in between a platform inside and a rooftop tent. So Space was really not that big of an issue because we had been living in such a small space, minus having access to the outdoors, of course. I just was really motivated to find a home for us. I was looking at all my options because I was really struggling trying to find something I could afford. I ended up getting a pretty good deal on it. They had already come down about $6,000 off the asking price, and then I was able to negotiate a little bit more off based on the wear and tear. And I do have an educational background in negotiations and a dad who is a professional negotiator, so yeah, I find it kind of fun to do negotiations, but really there wasn't a need to do a whole lot of negotiation with this camper. It all worked out seamlessly, perfectly, and it was almost like God blessed the whole transaction. So with my background in management and conflict resolution, all of the experience I gained from there, and having a dad who has an extensive background in negotiations, I have a few tricks up my sleeve. And one of those tricks I can't even claim, but it's one I utilize, and that is a concept called a batna. If you've never heard of a batna, I'm gonna tell you what it is, but if you have heard of a batna, I hope you're just as excited as I am because they are so cool. So a batna is a best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And I apply this concept to my life on almost every decision-making situation that I have. In simplified terms, a batna is basically a concept used in negotiations to leverage your options to make the best deal possible. Now, if you want to learn more about batnas and all of this topic, I do recommend you read the book, Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreements Without Giving In. That is an awesome book that I go to all the time to refresh on these principles because it helps you navigate how to establish a batna and why it's so important, because ultimately the goal is to walk away from a deal without buyer's or seller's remorse. So that book is a really good tool if you want to expand your knowledge base on that topic. You can literally ask my dad. He will tell you every time I come to him with a question on what I should do. He'll say, "What's your batna?" Having that batna will help you identify what you are willing to walk away from and what you are willing to not walk away from. I utilize that principle when establishing my goal for finding a future home for us. And I have done this for every single camper purchase, for every major decision in my life, and it has helped me not regret my decision. Of course, prayer is a huge factor in this too. Another big factor that contributed is my budget. What was I willing to put forth? What was I willing to spend? Was I willing to get a loan? Was I willing to make this big purchase knowing I did not have secure employment? All of these things played a huge role in identifying what my walk away strategy was. Then it was deal breakers. What am I not willing to live with? One being leaks. If you guys have been following my channel, you know that leaks are a huge factor in my frustrations with my past homes. So I didn't want to have a home that was going to have water damage or be susceptible to leaks and things like that. I wanted to have something that was a little bit more secure, so that narrowed me down quite a bit. Another thing was that I was limited to a 4Runner as my tow vehicle. You know, I had contemplated different ideas. I thought about getting a cheap truck and getting another truck camper and then towing potentially the 4Runner. I thought about getting an old U-Haul box truck and converting that into a home and then flat towing or towing the 4Runner. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to put the wear and tear on my 4Runner, so flat towing didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then I was getting extremely out of budget by adding car carriers and all these things that I had to do to start from scratch with having a build your own build. So I kind of started process eliminating all of these different ideas, but I had to work through those ideas in order to get to where I was now. I am a visual thinker. I have to think through every situation, every scenario before I'm comfortable making a decision. So knowing that about myself, having this strategy or this concept to follow really helps me dial it in. I also knew that I wasn't a very handy person, so I didn't want to get in over my head with like a vintage build or something that was going to require a full gut and redo. So those were just things that I put on paper and started adding to my batna. What am I willing to live with? What am I not willing to live with? And that will ultimately help me decide what my best alternative to a negotiated agreement is. The biggest factor in this whole process was the fact that I was leaving a seasonal job and I was going into the world of unemployment again. And that is daunting. You know, I have probably applied to over 2,000 jobs in the last year and a half, and it's been very discouraging. Then I was faced with, okay, well, the only jobs that I seem to be able to find right now are campground jobs. Well, campground jobs require an RV. So if I don't get the RV, I'm not qualifying for the short-term jobs that I can get right now. And that will prevent me from being able to sustain my life until I can get a job within an industry that will be more supportive to a full-time employment. So it was just a lot of things that were playing into this and a lot of risks that I was looking to take. However, I will say that the absolute most significant factor in all of this was my faith. My faith has really dictated everything that has happened because God provided a miracle throughout this whole situation, you guys. I had been looking for scamps specifically and casitas and other fiberglass type campers that I could pull with the 4Runner for years. And I have never found anything under $15,000 that was remotely worth looking into. Now, you could find them for a little bit cheaper, but they usually had a lot of damage. They had some issues, or I just couldn't get them fast enough. They would sell like hotcakes before I could even get to the location to go look at it. So it's been a really competitive situation. So when I say my faith and prayer, God delivered, baby. I mean, He delivered. So what I did is I basically searched within a 500-mile radius every single RV dealer, and I searched their inventory, because what I found is that you could search for a scamp or a casita or whatever, insert here, and you might find some and you might not. And I'm gonna be honest, I did not find this casita through a basic search on Google. I went to a dealer and found it. But when I tell you that the power of prayer and the overwhelming feeling of the Holy Spirit kicked in, I jumped on it. Finally, I found a casita in my budget on sale. I had been praying about it. I jumped on it. When I went there, I talked to them and everything was working. Everything looked great. There was a few things here and there, but this is a 1995. It is to be expected that there's going to be some wear and tear and some things that need to be fixed. That's going to be with any trailer that is that old. That's kind of how I found it. I was just very persistent. I was patient. I prayed about it, and eventually the Lord provided a beautiful home for Pike and I. So I talked to the guy. He was like, don't worry, we're gonna hold it for you. We'll see you in a few hours. So I got in the car and I drove from St. Mary, Montana to Post Falls, Idaho, and I looked at the camper. I called my dad. I FaceTimed him on Facebook Messenger and I showed him around. I asked him what his thoughts were and we brainstormed together. It was getting kind of late because I did have almost a 7-hour drive to get there. So we decided that I would come back in the morning, I would sleep on it, think about it, pray about it, and then make a decision in the morning. But I was pretty much sold. It was a done deal with this company. As soon as I drove off that lot, man, did the human nature kick in, and did I forget all. In one ear, out the other. Done, gone, bye-bye. Faith, what's that? I went into pure, unadulterated panic mode. But I redeemed myself through the grace of Jesus because I came back and I trusted in the Lord. And ultimately I found a Cracker Barrel and I said, you know what, some fried chicken, cheesy hash brown casserole sounds delicious. I'm gonna go treat myself to a good dinner. I'm going to create my batna and I'm going to pray. And that's what I did. And I ended up staying in the Cracker Barrel parking lot that night. And it was such a wonderful last night in the 4Runner. It was really kind of an emotional experience because that was the first time I'd gone back into the 4Runner without Agron. And I think that a lot of these things were just overwhelming me. And I'm only human. So I struggled with maintaining my faith, but quickly I prayed. I went into prayer mode and I said, God, I don't know what to do. All I can do is trust you. And at this point, I don't know what direction you're leading me because responsibly, it doesn't make sense to spend all of my money on a camper when I don't have a job. So I was really overthinking this whole thing, and that's what I do best. I just spoke with my friend Terry. Terry, thank you. Y'all, my bed just collapsed. I have to get up. This is stupid. Okay, I got my chamber pot. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. My sugars. You're so precious. I'm getting side-eye. I better leave him alone. You ready to get up? Yeah.
I don't know, guys, I'm really thinking about this. I've been craving Cracker Barrel, so this is actually really good. I think that this is where I needed to be in my head. It hurts like through my eyeball on the way to the other side. And my neck is super sore. So I know it's got to be stress related. And so I've got me some sweet tea. And I'm just going to have some quiet time with the Lord. And when I'm at Cracker Barrel, I feel like I have to talk like I'm from Kentucky again. So hopefully I'll make a decision. All right, guys, let's go buy an RV.
I woke up the next morning feeling decently refreshed. I did have a migraine coming on because of the overthinking and all the stress and all that kind of stuff, but I decided to go get breakfast at the Cracker Barrel again because I didn't have enough of that cheesy hash brown casserole, whatever I'm trying to say. I said, you know what? God provided a Casita in my budget for the first time ever. I never thought Casitas, first of all, were in my budget. Scamps were kind of attainable, but Casitas not so much, especially one with a full bathroom. And I was like, God has put this in front of you and you are going to allow yourself to get talked out of it because you are losing faith. Not today, evil one. Goodbye. So we went forward and I purchased the Casita, but I was able to negotiate them down quite a lot, all taxes, sales tax, all the stuff. I negotiated down and I got the camper for under $10,000. I have spent the last 2.5 years trying to find one of these campers and not one of them have been in that price range. So for me, I knew the value. I knew that it was going to bring a piece of my life back and I had a home. I was willing to invest. And I did. I spent all my money. I had no idea I was gonna make my car payment the next month. And that's where my faith came in. Now, some people might say that's irresponsible, blah, 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 blah. You can go have your opinions. They're like buttholes, everybody got one. So you know what? I'm gonna do me, you do you. The ultimate goal with having a batna is walking away from a deal without buyer's or seller's remorse. And that's what happened for me. I made a decision, educated decision based on my background and all these concepts and tools, but ultimately it was God who presented the opportunity and allowed it to continue. And I will say 4 days later, I got a job. That is the whole thought process for me and how I got to where I am and what led me to make the decision on getting a Casita. Because Casitas weren't my first choice, a Scamp was, but this is a great alternative to a beautiful, wonderful, secure home. I've had like 3 or 4 rainstorms now and I haven't had any leaks and I am just ecstatic about that. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, you have to make a decision on if you're comfortable with the outcome. If you're not comfortable with the outcome, then it's never going to be a good deal. My advice to you would be make sure you create your batna, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. But you guys, I am so done talking. My throat is giving out. I'm starting to struggle and I just want to go cuddle with my dogs. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. But thank you so very much for watching, for sticking around, for suggesting this topic, because it means a lot to me to get to interact with you guys, especially from so far away in a virtual setting. You guys mean so much to me. I would not have as much fun making this content if it wasn't for you guys. So thank you so much for watching. You guys rock. I really love you guys and I am so excited to share this journey with you guys. So I'm gonna stop talking because if I don't, I'm gonna lose my voice. But anyways, have a wonderful, blessed day, you guys, and until next time, stay safe. Bye.
That came off way too easy.
Maybe our lives were not meant to collide from the start, but who could foresee the fall? Maybe it's time to decide what to do.